Okay, Geeta Dhyanam. O Bhagavad Gita himself, and which was composed of 18 chapters from within the Mahabharata by the ancient sage Vyasa. O Divine Mother, destroyer of rebirth, who showers the nectar of oneness upon us, O Bhagavad Gita, my affectionate mother, on thee I meditate. All the Upanishads are the cows. The milker is the cowherd boy, Krishna. Arjuna is the calf. People of purified intellect are the drinkers. And the milk is the supreme nectar of the Gita. My salutations to the Lord, who is the source of supreme bliss, whose grace makes the mute eloquent and the crippled cross mountains. Hari Om Tat Sat. So this morning we start the 10th, which is Vibhuti Yoga. Vibhuti Yoga. So we think of Vibhuti as what, Hari? We use the Vibhuti in puja, yes?
Yes.
So we think of it as what?
The ash.
We think of it as the ash. It's not really the ash. So Vibhuti is signifying something. So a good translation here, yoga of the divine manifestation. Yoga of the divine manifestations. And Swamiji tells a little story at the beginning of it. He says the 10th chapter is Vibhuti Yoga. Vibhuti means the divine manifestations. It doesn't mean the ash. The same name connected with holy ash. In South India, when holy ash is given, that ash is called Vibhuti. You may wonder why they call the ash Vibhuti. I don't know if we ever wondered. Is there a manifestation of the divine in the holy ash? To know that, we should know what is meant by Vibhuti, or how the holy ash is made. Holy ash is made from cow dung. But even that dirt can become holy when it's completely burned. Cow dung is burned in an airtight chamber. When it's fully burned, it becomes pure white ash, and immediately it gets the name Vibhuti. So is there anything we should discard as dirty? He says nothing is so low if it's processed properly. Even the dirtiest becomes the holiest of holies. This was a discussion that Lord Krishna was having with us over the last couple of days as well. Yes. So even in dirt, there's already holiness hidden. By burning out what isn't necessary, you bring out the holiness or the pure divine consciousness, and that's Vibhuti, the manifestation of the divine. In this chapter, Sri Krishna shows how the divinity is manifested in everything. Of course, including this thing, right? Most especially, since that's the consideration and the concern. So the process with the Vibhuti, with the cow dung, is a sacrificial fire, isn't it? Right? In the same, what's required of us?
Burning.
In sacrificial fire, jumping into the sacrificial fire to burn away all which is imaginary. Right? Unreal. Oh. So that's the significance. Okay. So as we begin, number 1 first. The Blessed Lord said, if you listen further, mighty Arjuna, I will continue my supreme teachings to benefit and delight you. That's the word. To benefit and delight you. Not even the gods or holy sages know my origin. The truth is that I am the source of the gods and the sages. So why is it that the gods and the sages don't know the origin, don't know my origin? He answered the question. Why? Because they're all what relative to? Sorry?
They're all born from it, right?
Yeah. We talked about this the other day. You know, the seed can't know the tree's origin.
Yeah.
Except by looking within. And still, it will know that I'm of the tree. Right? But it won't know the origin of the tree. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? So how does the egg know the origin of the chicken? And the gods and sages here were the same. Whenever it's said the gods, we're talking about in the native traditions, the shamanic traditions, they're called the elementals. The elemental beings. So the beings that rule over the elements, but also the beings that rule over all of these functions, the mental functions, the functions of the body, the functions in the astral, the functions of the prana, how the prana flows. So there's just the one absolute. All of this is within the one absolute consciousness. But the shop foremen and women who are responsible for the proper function of. So you can say like that. If you see the person or persona in everything here, then you see there has to be an aspect of the persona overseeing. You oversee this limited space right here. There's a person overseeing this limited space. But what you discover is, but this person doesn't have any ultimate reality, yes? It's an imaginary person. In the same way. But still, you're ruling over this limited space. So even the ego, as it were, has to be of the absolute because it's ruling over a space that's not actually his. It's, yeah? So, and then you discover, the blood is universal, the veins are universal, the skin is universal, the elements are universal, the intelligence is universal, the prana is universal, etc., etc. Emptiness, that's the emptiness, empty of the skandhas. No separation. The emptiness in Buddhism means there's no self, no little self. Empty of an individual. But there, as it were, individual functions within the unity. Individualized functions within the unity. They're not separate from the unity, right? The flow of blood is not separate from the unity. It's a unified movement, in fact, but still there is a flow of blood, as it were. There's a flow of prana, as it were. In fact, there are 5 of them, but really all of one prana, and then all of one consciousness. So whenever we hear of the gods, then this is what it's referring to. Okay. Always, in all the scriptures, in the Upanishads, etc., when we get to the gods, there's only one, but there are these individualized, as it were, aspects that have specific functions within the totality.
It's like a chain of command, like you have a big ship and you have all this
absolutely
people doing it.
Absolutely. You know, when we look at our situation and you come to see I'm not an individual, still there is an individualized function within the totality.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah. There's only the totality, but the functions each have their own character. They have their own characteristics. There are laws governing them. There are rules. There are data sheets and spec sheets. That's what we would say in the computer business. There are specifications that they operate within. And that's spoken to here as well as the Lord continues to teach and delight us. In the 10th chapter, this is also spoken to. It's also taught about.
So
what was first? What was first? In other words, he'll start there in a minute.
Are these gods self-realized, or are they still working on something?
So it's said, and even if I had experience, I can't speak to it because I can't remember it. So it's said that they're not. It's said, we hear even the gods, even the devas, they long for human birth because that is said to be the only way to realize. And why? Well, that's spoken to in the preceding or the following shlokas also, why this human birth is a middle ground. So, okay. So, not even the gods or the holy sages, the rishis, know my origin. So they know something, right?
Right.
But they don't know where I came from because they came from me. Okay, here's what came. The snot doesn't know about the nose. But the nose knows about the snot. The seed doesn't know about the tree, but the tree knows about the seed.
It doesn't seem like they would be desiring, if they were really a sage, they would not desire to know anymore, would they?
I can't speak to that. I mean, there's everything here, so I can't speak to that. I can't say why they wouldn't. Among all people, but I can say that knowing that I don't know is high wisdom. So I might desire to know. But desiring to know probably would lead me to knowing that I don't know. It's not going to lead me to knowing that I know because I don't know. But still I might desire to know. Yes? Do you find yourself there? Okay, number 3. Among all people, those who recognize me as the unborn and beginningless Lord of everything know the truth and free themselves from wrongdoing. And there's a beautiful commentary here from Swami Venkatesh on this, on the 3rd. Repeat again. Its translation's the same. He who knows me as unborn and beginningless, as the great Lord of the worlds, he among mortals is undiluted and liberated from all sins. And here's the commentary, Swamiji adds. He says, what is God's own knowledge of himself? What is God's wisdom concerning himself? And this is being shared. First, he is unborn and therefore beginningless. And second, he is the great Lord of the worlds, or planes of consciousness, or viewpoints. Here's an interesting thesis, antithesis, synthesis, and transcendence. God is unborn and is not involved in all these passing appearances or phenomena. Who then is the controller of these phenomena, which by their orderliness and purposefulness suggest such a governor? Who then is the controller? It is God. He's not involved in them, yet they do not function independently of him. And you get a little taste of this when you're allowed to step back from yourself. You get a little taste of it when you're allowed to step back from yourself. When you're and I know we all have moments of this, especially engaging in sadhana, when you step back from yourself and you see that yourself is acting on its own.
Oh.
Habitually, right? But it's acting on its own, yes? But then, and you see in these moments that you're observing and you're unaffected by what's happening. Have you had those moments? Okay. So you get a little taste of it, but you also see that you're the control of it because you see you can change it. Right? So you're unaffected by it, but still, who's the controller? Who's the controller of the world? Unaffected by the world, God, I, is the controller of the world. Huh? Oh. At some point, I had the visual of a top, a child's toy, a top. You know how you can take it and wind up the string, and then set it down on the ground. I used to love to do this, and pull the string, and the top spins like that. Yeah. So, and you're not the top. It's true, right? But the top is of you. The motion of the top is of you. Yeah? You made it to spin, and now you're standing there watching it. So you're the controller of the top. Yes? You can stop it if you want. You're unaffected by it. Yeah? In the same way as this mind. Somehow you can start it. You can. Yeah, you can start it going. You can look at an object and start it going. You can wind it up. You can feed it, can't you? Wind it up. Yes? Or you can stop it. Yeah? Yeah. So you're the controller of it. It's of you. So in the same way.
So this choice made by the intellect, but it came from beyond the intellect, basically, right?
Yeah, the controller is above the intellect. Functioning through the intellect. So sometimes we can step back and see the macro and the micro. So we'll use those examples sometimes, right? So maybe that can help to share, to see. So he says, who then is the controller of these phenomena, which by their orderliness and purposefulness suggest such a governor? It's God. He's not involved in them, yet they do not function independently of him. Shall we then compare God to a despotic ruler who whimsically controls the destinies of people without getting involved in their miseries in any way? And he says, oh no. That would leave no room for his great compassion and love, which virtually compel him to serve those who are devoted to him. He's very kind, and therefore, whenever the balance of right and wrong is greatly upset, he incarnates himself. So he steps into the dream. He becomes the divine top. Who can help all the other tops. God's own nature keeps the entire universe vibrating and scintillating. Okay, part of the reason we were reading this morning from Fabric of the Cosmos, Monday. You remember the visualization of space and the strings appearing and disappearing and like that, right? Yeah. It's vibrating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even though there's no thing there, it's vibrating, and that vibrating, coming in, going, all of that, scintillating is a word that he uses as well, which is a pretty cool word for it.
He said sometimes the particles will just annihilate and just
gone.
Gone.
Like that. Ah.
That's interesting.
So, and that vibration is the underlier of all of the movement here and all of the thingness here. So really, when science is seeing that, and they're seeing it through math, they're not seeing it through a microscope. They're seeing it through the deeper language of music or math, which are really the same. I was having a lovely conversation with dear Emmanuel, who's coming back to be with us on February 6th.
Oh, good.
With Matt and some of our other friends from Tucson and such. Sorry, Opala. 2nd, 6th. Oh no. Yeah. Okay. Well, you can tune in.
We'll put it on
You can tune in. We'll be online. Yeah. So we were having this conversation. Great musician and so inspired in the study, but the observation of music, and he gets that. And when we started talking about nada yoga and that which is underlying the instrumental sounds, including the thoughts, as being universal anahata, without instrument. That what we're seeing in the fabric of space through the math is the same. A music which plays on its own, but who is the controller, the holder of the music? That will be Brahman. That will be the absolute. That will be the absolute beyond space. Beyond space. But space, which is the most subtle of the elements, will reflect it.
Yeah. It's I was reading that the space is actually not part of the skandhas because it doesn't have a resistance or a form. You can't localize it into a skandha form. It's very interesting to read that. Swamiji, I have a question. But aren't the scientists, sometimes you say that we're not seeing a world, we're seeing our mind. So aren't they, when they're doing all these experiments and such, aren't they just seeing their mind's interpretation of what's...
They're getting to that which is more subtle than the interpretations. In other words, they're getting to that which is aspect of universal mind, which is really as far as the mind could go.
How are they doing that? I guess I would ask.
You study science and see.
But...
No. What's the deepest of you that you can identify? You can identify silence within you, can you not? Peace within you. You don't know what it's made of, correct?
It's identifiable.
Yeah, but you can identify that it's there, correct? Okay, in the same way. In the same way. So you just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper, and you'll finally get to the deepest. Now you can call it whatever you choose, but you won't know its origin, is it true? And you won't know its nature. But you can get, if you observe very closely, and if you contemplate, then you get some aspects of its nature. For example, you can come to know that peace is full. So, okay. God's own nature. And you could tell also when you come to see and observe that here in this manifestation, supposed manifestation, that nothing is created and nothing is destroyed.
Yeah, that's an interesting.
Then, and this is discussed, then you know it has to come from something, so you'll continue to look.
Yeah. Honestly.
God's own nature keeps the entire universe vibrating and scintillating, but in that there is neither an action nor an actor. In other words, he is not limited to unity, mere infinity as opposed to finitude, or transcendental as opposed to sensible nature. He's one and he is many, and he is one in many. He is many in one. And he is that inexpressible something which we all try to express in various ways. Hence, one who realizes God as this, that, both, neither, and that which remains when all pairs of opposites have been affirmed, denied, and transcended, is never deluded. He is free from sin, for if sin is forgetfulness of God, he never forgets God. It's beautiful. Commentary, isn't it? Perfect commentary on this. So he continues, out of me, and so now to amaze us. Now he talks more about the world and I. The absolute. Out of me arise the qualities of discernment, or buddhi. So how is it that we're able to discern? Out of me arise the qualities of discernment. Wisdom. Freedom from delusion. Forgiveness. Truth. Satyam. Self-control. Equanimity. Pleasure and pain. Birth and death. Fear and also fearlessness. Also, non-injury, ahimsa, tranquility, contentment, austerity, tapas, generosity, dana, charity often translated that way, as well as honor and dishonor. Throughout the creation, all these different qualities come solely from me.
Supreme source.
And Swamiji adds a short commentary. He says, this means whether something is good or bad, painful or pleasant, God is the source. Without God, nothing can be. How can you even say something is bad or good? Nothing is bad if you use it for the proper purpose. And there comes the concept of vibhuti again. Right? Of the divine manifestation. If you get to the source, then you're burning away the imagination, you're burning away the unreal, right? And what remains is the divine. So this, my God, if we can get this, of course getting it is not easy, but this is the practice that we've been working with as well, right? Coming back to a few days near the end of the 9th chapter, practicing the presence of God. Because again, the question is, where could you not find God? Right? So you can practice God's presence in everywhere, in everything or anything, every time, anytime. And what's being shared is supremely logical, you see. It's not sense in terms of common sense or any kind of sense. It's not a feeling. It's a truth. And it resonates too, doesn't it? Yeah.
Super easy to understand.
Yeah. And so when we forget, who's forgetting? And if you can remember that,
Wow.
vibhuti. Huh?
Wouldn't the absence of a thought be the forgetting?
Yes.
And that would be the silence.
Well,
That's kind of a contorted way to think of it, maybe.
yeah,
but
we'll close here. Well, who is anything here? It's the point. Who is anything here? So anything here, you can look to its source, and you can't but find God.
Well, that kind of crashes my fault finding. I don't know how I'm going to live anymore. Literally.
Yeah, that's a good death. That's where the I crashes. The little I crashes. Yeah. So, and now he describes a little more, and we'll read and then come back to this. Yeah, in the morning. Tomorrow morning. I always forget on Tuesday mornings, I always forget, and I say, okay, tomorrow morning we'll come back to this. And of course, Wednesday morning is walking meditation or... So I had to think for a moment. Let's see, today is Thursday. So yes, tomorrow morning we'll come back to this shloka. The 7 great sages and the 4 ancient founders of humanity, which are the Manus, were formed in my mind, and from me received their vitality. The rest of the world's creatures subsequently evolved from them. So a little discussion of that tomorrow. I could never forget, and I said I could never forget, so we'll just go with that. I could never forget that the day with Swami Premananda in class, where he spoke of the first man, the first person, and in the Abrahamic tradition, it's Adam, and Manu is the name. That was the first time I heard the word Manu, and of course, Manu. What's Manas?
The mind.
Manu, then, is of the mind. Of course, it's there in the name. It's there in the name. So we'll come back to that. There's some lovely commentary there. Okay. Anything else for this morning? Comment, question?
There's a lot there to contemplate.
Yes?
Very substantial.
Well, and there's a lot there to practice. And that's where it becomes practical. Really, you, through the day, you take some time through the day and break your head trying to see it. And there are all these opportunities to see, but we practice it. We actually do it. We take some time and do it. And that helps us to break through. Okay.
Yeah, I guess I try and think of it as, what do I suffer from? How do I cause others to suffer? And then reference what's being shared to that. Like, how do I stop? Or how do I pull off whatever's blocking me from loving everyone?
Yeah. Well, and God is also compassion. And that'll be discussed shortly. Mm-hmm. So therefore, you ask. Ultimately, you have to ask inside, and you have to ask sincerely. as long as we remain in a world apart, then we'll remain in a world apart. But recognizing this, we establish ourselves in the source. I remember also, what Uma shared the day before yesterday about actually doing this. It's profound when we do it. It's also very scary. It's very scary to do. It's very scary to really live as if it's true that we don't exist in the way that we imagine ourselves to. We tend to hold up the pretense of existing in the way that we imagine ourselves to do and try to relate to everything from this place. But eventually, if something's false, you're going to have to finally let it go. Right? If it's been proven to us time after time after time after time that it's false, eventually we're going to have to accept it. And in this case, especially considering that the truth is amazing, right? May I amaze you, says Lord Krishna. I'll continue to tell you and amaze you. Jesus says in the Gospel of Thomas, "Seek and ye shall find. Ask and ye shall be answered. Knock and the door shall be opened unto you. And first you will be disturbed. And then you will be amazed. And then you will find that you rule over all." Hariom Tat Sat. Okay. So final prayers in Arti. Page 174. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushti Vardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamamritat. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushti Vardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamamritat. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandim Pushti Vardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mritor Mokshiyamamritat. Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Shantu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyanto Ma Kashit Dukhabhave Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritangamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudashyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O adorable Lord of mercy and love, salutations and prostrations unto Thee. Thou art omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient. Thou art Satchidananda. Thou art existence, knowledge, and bliss absolute. Thou art the indweller of all beings. Grant us an understanding heart, equal vision, balanced mind, faith, devotion, and wisdom. Grant us inner spiritual strength to resist temptation and to control the mind. Free us from egoism, lust, anger, greed, hatred, and jealousy. Fill our hearts with divine virtues. Let us behold Thee in all these names and forms. Let us serve thee in all these names and forms. Let us ever remember thee. Let us ever sing thy glories. Let thy name be ever on our lips. Let us abide in thee forever and ever. On Bolo Sakura Shivananda Maharaj Ki, and for all the saints and sages of all the traditions.